Okay, we're moving on to the purples now. What we're going to do is start off with our Spectrum Red Deep coming in from the top and our Pthalo Blue coming up from the bottom. Now, because we're working with the pure pigments and we haven't got tints or darker tones from it, means that we've got a lot of play here. It's the whole idea of putting the black and white glazes over to start off with. You can actually do that with a lot of different colours. And if we're expanding out to using our greens and things, which we'll be mixing next, you can start actually mixing greens on top of reds to get completely different complements and get a lot more impact from it. Now the Pthalo Blue is quite dirty. It's got a tiny bit of green in it. Not a huge amount, but it just has that bias. And when played up against another cool in the Spectrum Red Deep, we're going to get a fair amount of impact with this purple. You can see how it's actually becoming darker through the center than what the two colours are together. When you're doing the purples, you'll find they'll glaze very, very quickly and have a lot of impact straight away. Remember to work lightly, you don't want to overpower it. As you can see, I'm pretty much just hitting it and moving away. I step back about 5 feet at least, gives me a better judgment, and I can start to see the way the colours are mixing. As you can see, where the two have come together just here, it's a really deep, rich tone. Gives you a great substitute instead of having to constantly use black. Now, after saying that, we're going to add our black to this now. And just very lightly. And as you would have found with when you were doing your oranges and doing those black glazes, it gives you a good range of neutral brown tones to work with. I'm just going to overglaze both of these. Let's do so because we're running that edge on both of them. I'm just going to pull the red down straight along the lines of where we were working. Make sure your pastels are clean when you're doing any glazing, because otherwise you'll just pick up the other colours and it can contaminate quite easily. Okay, we're moving over to the really intense blue and red now. Back with our Spectrum Red now for Ultramarine Blue. By this stage you should have a fair idea as to how the colours react to one another. if you work a warm and a cool together, you'll normally get a conflict. And what I mean by that is you'll get a really obvious change when they hit. It won't be a subtle one. It can be quite useful when you're trying to find those darker tones, just to really get there and knock the socks off. You might like to know why I keep changing the direction of my strokes in my pastel work as well, because it adds interest to the picture. If you've got every stroke running the same way, it looks kind of boring. You don't get the same sort of feel. Whereas if you're using repetition on so many different angles, not only do you get a nice fill through the paper, you can push and pull your pigments so much easier. Across this one now, I just get there and run some horizontal strokes down, you'll see just how easily they're blended. And to clean up those edges, just a very slight change in direction adds that interest back to the piece. You can also see just how much difference there is tonally between the blue at the base, the purple that we've mixed in the middle, and the red. So now we'll just glaze our white and our black. As I said, this can be done any way that you want to. You can leave it just as the strokes, which will give you a good idea of just what happens on the first layer, or you can actually blend that down for a more subtle approach. Whatever suits, it's all about learning the techniques and learning what you can do with the pastels. Don't be afraid to experiment. Now keep in mind, what we're doing here can be done with every colour you've got in your collection. You'll be quite surprised at what you can get out of it. Most of what you see in my work is the result of a lot of optical mixing, which is what we're doing here. Just pushing and pulling the pigments backwards and forwards through one another to create colours and tones that you otherwise can't get your hands on. And it adds so much more interest to the pieces.